Welcome to the Intuitive Websites Internet Marketing Podcast, bringing you the country's top podcast on the subject of internet marketing.
Welcome back to another edition of the Internet Marketing Podcast here at Intuitive Websites. I'm your host, Glenn Thayer. With me, as always, the CEO of Intuitive Websites, Thomas Young. Today, we're going to talk about microsites and multiple websites. And Tom, maybe you can address some of the issues that come up, because I'm sure people have brands that they say, you know, maybe we have a division that services cars. We're auto repair. One services cars, another is a collision repair, and another might be keeping your car running smooth. So do they have one site or do they have multiple sites? I think that's really what we want to address today.
Absolutely. This podcast was suggested by Tim Martin. He's a listener in Australia. And he was asking that same question. You know, when do you have multiple websites for your company, or when do you develop a strategy of multiple websites, to reach your web marketing goals? And so, what I want to do first is kind of define the differences between the two. Microsites are more or less smaller websites that can be focused on either a service or product within your company or some piece of information or a resource. Multiple website strategies is more the idea that you have actual multiple websites, which would be more complete and thorough sites. So microsites might be smaller, whereas a regular website, of course, is going to be larger and have more content. But the key thing here is that all of this is part of the strategy in your strategic plan. And it's really the concept of what are you trying to accomplish online, and how can you best meet user needs? And so some of the things that might come up is the concept that you have different countries that you sell into. And so each of these different countries might need a different website. Or you might be looking at an SEO strategy where you have a bunch of domain names and you want to set up various websites to target SEO rankings and better rankings in Google. Also, another idea that people use for microsites is that it really simplifies navigation, because, like you mentioned, the example of the automotive industry, which is a good example. You might have people that just do automotive repair come in huge amounts of varieties, from windshield repair to changing oil, changing tires. I mean, all of these different things. So one repair center could offer all those services, but it might make sense for them to have a variety of websites, because that could make navigation easier for the user and easier for them to get their specific needs met.
Well, especially if they're experts in one specific market. If they're known in one city as the go-to people for windshield repair, right, and they might be known for the consumer for windshield repair. However, they might be the go-to place from insurance companies for collision repair. Right,
and so it's important really to have this in your strategy, how that works, because there are a lot of downsides to doing this as well. I mean, it seems like it would be straightforward, and if we have different services and different products, you should have multiple websites, but the downside is that it can be a problem for users. They can get confused about your brand and not understand, what the windshield repair has to do with getting my tires fixed and things like that, and cause confusion. And then also, if you don't set things up right, Google might look at this and say, hey, you've got 100 websites all linking to the same place. That's not fair by our rules. And you don't want to get in trouble by Google. So you've got to be really careful about the user, making sure the user's needs are met, and then making sure you're following the guidelines of Google.
Now, can't that come in from search engine optimization? Obviously, you want to be friendly with Google. However, isn't it true if you have too much information on your website, your company does too much, you can confuse or overwhelm your customer. So the visitor to the website could say, "There's too much here. I'm overwhelmed," or there might be, "I have to go to too many different places to find out what I need."
It's what's interesting about that, and we've seen this in user testing, is that what confuses users, first of all, is just a complex, hard-to-use website. That's number one. But number two is, if there's a disconnect between the services that you're offering and the general theme of the website, people get confused. Like, for example, the automotive repair. Let's say you do automotive repair and then you do guitar lessons or something like that. And so when people see guitar lessons on the website, they're thinking, that doesn't make sense to me. Why is this guy offering guitar lessons, and also he's going to change my tires? So that's when the time comes to have a different website, because you've got to be real clear in your navigation. And it all ties back to the strategy and having a real clear strategy written out and clear goals for your website before you look at microsites or multiple websites.
So how can you make it work without either having too much information on one site versus having way too many sites? What's the first step?
Well, I would think, we talked just a second ago about strategy. Obviously, have the strategy first. And in the strategy, think about your ROI, what kind of return you want to see from your websites in general, because it's going to be expensive to build more websites and write the content, get the domain names, get all that set up. Once you have that in place, then let's really get inside the head of your website users and visitors. You really need to see your business from their perspective, because then it'll be real clear to you, well, yeah, for our users in this case, we need a separate website for guitar lessons. They're going to come to us and get their tires done, but because I got this side business going on, it should be a separate website. And then you might want to think about at some point consolidating your brands into a holding company or something like that. But for the most part, users don't care about those things. They just want their tires changed or their guitar lessons, whatever it is they're looking for.
Now, when you say that, here's the other part, just for clarity's sake. Setting up another, if you've got guitar lessons and auto repair, you're not going to want to have a link to auto repair from the guitar site, or have links from auto repair into the guitar site. Yeah,
probably not. Probably not, because once again, Google's not going to like that. And if you do that dozens of times, you could get in trouble with Google. The bottom line is that the websites have to add value to the users and not confuse them. And they need to be convenient for the user. It needs to be easier for them to find it. And one other real important thing that'll be a win-win for everybody is that even if it's a microsite, it's got to have depth of content. Now, when I say that, I'm not saying you've got to have 150 pages, but even if it's a handful of pages, have some depth of content on there. Have 2 or 3 pages that have 400 or 500, 600 words that really explain what you're doing. And we've got other podcasts we've done on how to write content for websites, but don't do a microsite that's super thin on content with just a few links. Get some content in there, because Google likes that.
Well, I mean, when should a company have multiple websites or build microsites?
Well, and we talked about this. You actually mentioned it earlier. Is if you have differentiating brands, if you have, you might be a potato chip company, but you might have 4 or 5 different brands in your potato chips, and you might also have crackers and things like that. When the brands are differentiated, then you have separate websites. When you need to have standalone resources and information, it's a good idea. Like, for example, you might be a healthcare facility and you might treat cancer. If you specialize, say, in lung cancer, a certain kind of cancer, you might set up a website just dealing with as a resource for lung cancer patients, separate from your clinic. So when it can stand alone for either resources or information, you can do it as well. If it stands alone, just make sure that you're consistent in your messaging. So if you have this website for, lung cancer patients, then keep it focused on those resources. Don't bring in other navigation, that sort of thing. If you do this type of strategy right, then you could throw out a much bigger net for search engine optimization. And then once again, keep in mind, you've got to have the depth of content there. Another idea would be to also, if you're doing a short promotion or incentive or product preview, a lot of times with the way social media works these days and that sort of thing, you might introduce a new product. And when you introduce that new product, you might set up a microsite just for that product. It might even be temporary, but it's an easy way for people to discover the product, read about it, learn about you, and then hopefully end up back on your corporate page again.
I think a lot of the liquor distributors and liquor companies do that with their promotions. They have a new brand coming out, or they want to just go back out and reintroduce the brand to the public.
Yeah.
And so they'll set up a microsite for, let's say, Jose Cuervo. Well, we'll just use that as an example.
Yeah.
And they have Cuervo games.
Yeah.
So now you have you go to CuervoGames.com and you can go play
a game, and then that might be a temporary site that at some point gets pulled down and redirected. When you think about ad campaigns, like speaking of liquor, the Dos Equis guy, they might build a website just for that guy, right? Just for make up a creative story about this Dos Equis beer drinker guy, and then when the promotion ends and the commercials end, that might be archived then onto the main Dos Equis website. those are examples of ways to have multiple websites or microsites to help promote the business.
You brought up the Dos Equis guy, because Dos Equis has also set up the whole Facebook fan page specifically for him, where he has quotes and all of that. Can our listeners set up a Facebook fan page and consider that a microsite?
Well, I wouldn't call it a microsite. I mean, it is in some ways a microsite technically, but it's Facebook. So I would say keep it focused on the social media is actually being Facebook, LinkedIn, or MySpace, whatever you're on. But the thing about social media sites is that you really can't get the depth of knowledge there and information that you might want to put on the site. And you can't control it either. So this is a good way for you to control that information and drive people into some type of conversion that you could set up on the site.
Well, what are some drawbacks? What are some problems that our listeners could run into using a microsite strategy?
Well, it's a good question, because here's the thing that if this isn't done right, it can really backfire on you in lots of ways. And we talked about this a little bit, but one of the biggest downfalls is you don't want to confuse your target market. And you don't want to compete against your main website. Everything has to work in unison. It's got to be a cohesive strategy. And then there's a couple things you can do with Google. One is be careful of content. Don't duplicate content, and don't set up duplicate pages, because you don't want to upset the guidelines for SEO in Google. And also the Google linking strategy. If you find yourself with 20, 30, 40 domain names all on the same server, all hosted at the same place, all owned by the same person, all linking back and forth to one another and to a main site, that's not considered a good thing to do by Google, and you could get in trouble. So you don't want to do that. And the way to avoid that, if you are going to have many sites all linking back and forth, is depth of content. Because if Google indexes those sites and says, hey, these are all unique websites, unique content, unique information, and they happen to link back to and forth to one another, that's a good thing. That's a win-win. Another downside is that it does take more time to maintain these. You're going to have more costs involved with them. And it is going to be difficult to keep the content updated and fresh on your microsites, especially if you're doing a promotion-based site. So just be ready to take the site down, or stay on top of the content. You don't want it to become stale or irrelevant. The last thing we want on the internet is thousands and thousands of these microsites that don't do anything anymore. And also keep in mind, the last point I want to make here about this is that there's no trick or quick fix to web marketing. You're trying to make life easier for the users by doing this, and it's not going to be a quick fix to getting you website results.
So what are some examples of people who have implemented microsite strategies and have had them work?
Yeah, and we talked about a couple examples already, but I've just noted a few here. One is automotive sales in car dealerships. Obviously, if you're a Lexus or a Volvo or Toyota dealership, you're going to link into the main website, but you're going to have your own website too. Well, those are really microsites of the brand Toyota or Volvo or whatever it is. So that's an example of an effective microsite strategy. We also talked about international websites.
Wouldn't that also be, going back to car dealerships, if they've got a used car lot? Because right now, obviously, used cars is big, especially online. I know a lot of people that will get a Carfax account for a month.
Yeah.
And then they can go to an auto dealership's used cars. It might be, here's Phil Long Auto, here's Phil Long Used, and that could be the microsite. And within there, they can search all the VIN numbers, and they can search for their used cars. They're still linked back to new if they want, but otherwise they have their full catalog and inventory of used vehicles are listed online.
That's right, and so those are all microsites. You could just Lexus could just have one huge website with everything to do with Lexus on it, but they don't. They do the microsites. So that's an example. And then international websites. Keep in mind that a lot of times it might be easier to do language translation than to build a new website, but depending on the needs of your users. There's a lot of corporate holding companies up there that have multiple brands on the web, like PepsiCo and different companies like that. They have very effective multi-site strategies. A blog or a news website. Every website has a target market, and within that target market, there's news and information that needs to be disseminated. Well, you could easily have a news website or a blog website that would be a standalone site, that would be a microsite or in this case a multi-site strategy. Also, insurance, mortgage, and financial websites. If you are providing resources or information you certainly can set up microsites to support your main push or your main focus. That helps differentiate your services from the resource that you provide to people. A mortgage calculator website, a lot of times that might be a better standalone site than part of your big corporate site with hundreds of links and where it might get lost. New product announcements, which we talked about a little bit. Promotion surveys or research and testing is great with microsites. So A/B testing, for example, where you want to test an offer or a promotion or a conversion, you can set up a pay-per-click campaign, or you can drive people to a domain name and then test variations on different promotions or conversion testing to see what works best. And then, one of the reasons why microsites even exist is because of domain names and the idea that if you get a good domain name, sometimes it is a good idea to use it, to make that domain name work. We do that with Intuitive Websites. We have a website called 4stepprocess.com because it identifies our 4-step process with all of this resource. It's much easier to do that than to try to load up our website with this content information. So if you get a great domain name, you have a new product or service or other key content that you want to differentiate from your main website, those are really some of the best examples of successful strategies.
Another thing about domain names, and this might be something you can answer for our listeners, is there's a lot of times people will buy 30 domain names and point those domains to one specific hosting, one specific website. Is there any advantage from an SEO standpoint to doing that?
We haven't seen an advantage to doing that. It's probably better to take those domain names and build out the microsites. But once again, it depends on the strategy. It depends also on the variations of the domain names. And it depends on the usage of the domain names and why you're pointing them. But just to grab the domain names and point them, it's probably not an effective strategy. It's just not as useful. It's kind of like having 50 phone numbers all going to the same phone number. I mean, it's kind of, okay, well, if that phone number is really popular, then great. But if no one knows the number unless you give it to them, then it's not so good.
Yeah, the phone number works if you're in different cities, and it seems like a local call all the way around.
That might be a way to do it, yeah. And I think also the thing with domain names, too, to keep in mind, and with microsites, too, is that you get that domain name before your competitors get it. All right, and then you have it. You can use it for a microsite, or you can just hold on to it and at some point develop a strategy for that.
Well, as all of our listeners know, we do end with an action plan. Tom, what are the key action items for our listeners this week?
Well, you have new information today on multiple websites and microsites. So take a look at your strategic web marketing plan, which we hope you've all written based on these podcasts, and see, is it appropriate for us to have multiple websites and microsites? How can we use them to drive traffic and conversions? How can we link them into our email campaigns, our Facebook strategy, other social networking strategies, our strategy for our blog, and so forth? And then spend a little time researching the needs of the target market, how they use your website. Is your website overwhelming for most of your users? Should you break it down into pieces? And then make sure that you play by the rules of Google and add depth to all your websites, because the number one thing for Google and on a website is it relevant? Does it have content? Is that content updated? So meet those 3 criteria, and Google will probably leave you alone with your microsites. And then finally, be ready to monitor these sites. It's just like anything else on the web. If you just put it out there and ignore it, nothing will happen. If you put it out there and you monitor it and you put some strategy behind it and get some SEO work, look at your stats, then I think you'll see results from microsites, and it can become a winning strategy for you.
Well, thanks so much, Tom. Folks, we look forward to having you join us on the next Intuitive Websites Internet Marketing Podcast.
This has been an Intuitive Websites Internet Marketing Podcast. For more information and to see all the available podcasts and much more, visit intuitiveblog.com.